These Ipswich Town players are defying the odds.
Welcome back to TWTV and happy Christmas from myself, Jim Cooper, and the rest of the TWTV team. And you find us just behind Portman Road, and I'm joined by ex-Ipswich striker Alan Lee. Happy Christmas, Alan.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and the result didn't go the way we wanted to do today, but I've caught up with a load of old friends, and it's a wonderful club to be involved in.
Yeah, definitely. How was it? Were you on? What were you doing today? You were helping out in the lounges again.
Well, Simon Milton, obviously, he was at the game, and he's in really good shape.
Yeah.
But he, for obvious reasons, wasn't going to work the game, so I took on his role in the lounge, presenting before a Q&A with Jason DeVos.
Fantastic!
An Ipswich Town legend, a good friend of mine. So we've had a really nice day.
Good, and great to hear Simon's back at the ground, and that's fantastic to hear his health's going well.
Listen, that's what counts. Your friends, family, friends, health. So it puts the result in perspective.
Yeah. And obviously we didn't quite get the sort of early Christmas present we'd been hoping for from Ipswich today. As an ex-player, can you give us your sort of overview of the game, which was a tough afternoon against a very high quality team?
A very tough afternoon. Newcastle United, I thought they were good. I've always liked Newcastle United. I didn't realise how good they are, how fast they are, athletic. They've got great depth in the squad. And when you play these sort of games, you want to hope that the last thing you want to do is concede early. You want to build pressure on them, because there's no shame in admitting it. Their players are better than ours at the moment. Because they've been in the Premier League for so long. But obviously we conceded the early goal, and from then it was just going to be a very hard task.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really agree. I mean, I completely agree. There were two things that stood out for me. One was they were a much better side. When you see Tonali pulling the strings with Bruno next to him, you see them interplay in their front three, front four at times. Very good side. But unfortunately, I think collectively, Town, when there is that gap in quality, we really have to turn up, don't we, Alan? And I didn't think a lot of players were quite at the level today.
No, they weren't, but first of all, the amount of bad days we've had, you can count on one hand over 2 or 3 years. So let's not overreact to this. Yes, I get what you're saying, but what we're also missing is a striker, an outball. And obviously with the two players that can play number 9, Hurst and Delap, they're out. It's very hard then to do something different. And it's very hard to relieve pressure. And I don't think the answer is go out and spend 20 million on another centre forward. We need one of those, or both those, ideally both those back, playing first fit. And then I think you'd have seen a different game. And I'm not saying we would have won that game or anything like that. Newcastle are a fantastic team, but we would have had more options. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think Hurst. There's talk that Hurst could be back in January, which would be fantastic. I'm sure also in January they'll look at extra players. But you're a former striker. Let's look at that setup today. So we basically had Hutchinson on the left, Chaplin in the 10. And then Schmodix was up front with Burns on the right. And interestingly, I thought Burns had a really strong game. I thought Schmodix was a little bit lost, and Hutchinson and Chaplin maybe weren't on form. What was your take on the system and the setup and the players in the attack?
I think these players, Schmodix has got his move and play. He's a good player, but he's not a number 9. And as a player, it takes a lot of experience to play as number 9. So for significant portions of that game, actually, if I was with experience, as I grew older, I'd know, right, I can't. there's no point me running around everywhere trying to look for the ball, come into the ball. I have to occupy those two centre halves. I have to give them a problem. I have to make sure they're looking partially at me. They can't just keep everything in their eye frame. I've got to be on their shoulders, switching between them and playing high. And we just didn't have that. So very often you'd a back four that really never had a threat behind them. So that meant they can just look forward, see you and the ball. It's very hard to play against. So, but there's reasons why it happened.
Yeah, I think just one thing I noticed was sometimes we were going long, which was clearly failing because of those two large centre-backs. But there were a number of times, weren't they, when our centre midfield had the ball. The through balls were there, but the quality wasn't quite there. Did you notice that as well?
But that happens when you're a player and you know, it's like confidence is everything.
Yeah.
Okay? Confidence is everything, and if you've conceded another goal and there's the wrong sort of pressure on you, all of a sudden simple passes, because everything becomes harder. The ball looks smaller. Yeah. Everything you have to think about everything rather than coming naturally. There's reasons why that happens. So and you know, of going back to the start, that killed us.
Yeah, and I think that early goal, it's a collective confidence knock, and then as you said, the simple things become harder, and we weren't then playing on the front foot. Even people like Kajust who were playing well, sort of they went into their shell a little bit.
It's very hard because they've obviously worked on in the first 10-15 minutes. They've had maybe 4 balls in behind us, which are very successful balls, and they've got these powerful, strong runners that are getting on the end of it that you can't help but then drop back from that. You're nervous about this. You start dropping back. Then we're not playing our usual game because really we want to be expansive, playing out wide, moving the ball around. It becomes very, very, very difficult to do that.
Yeah. So maybe to start to close out on the players and the performance, I thought the subs were a bit of a positive today. I thought Taylor, Phillips, and Broadhead looked good when they came on.
Yeah, Broadhead certainly got into good positions, picked up the ball. He kind of drifted in from wide into that middle area very well. Ali ran around. He had a game, but you could tell he's probably suffering, not fit enough because, and I've been in that position, the only way you get fit enough in that sort of game is playing games and games and games. So he's got to find a way to have a little string of games to get to that match fitness.
And get his touch as well. You know, sometimes he did a lot of good stuff, didn't he, in terms of effort, running, but sometimes his touch wasn't quite there. And as you said, I think he's still carrying a bit of a knock.
And I'm not sure he's experienced. An experienced centre forward knows you've got to pin one of those centre halves. Even though they're big, you've got to make sure you block their path first before you come on and hold a ball up, or even lean into them and kind of, you know, trap them, if for want of a better word.
You presented the man of the match today. Who got it?
Well,
I missed that on the tannoy.
As happens, Omari was going to get it by the Seckford Hall, the sponsors. But in the circumstances, we decided the players are going to be in having a talk to the manager for a long while. It's never nice bringing a player up after a 4-0 win. So we decided not to bring the player up. We just did a photograph. We'd some Ipswich Town legends, Jason DeVos, we'd Johnny Wark and Carlos Edwards. So the sponsors were very happy.
And who was the man of the match?
It was Omari Hutchinson.
Okay, fine. Got you. Okay, so we look ahead. So tough set of fixtures coming up. Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, Fulham away. What can McKenna do? You know, that Arsenal trip is daunting. Everton had quite a good 0-0 draw there recently. What does he do just to embolden and get them to go again and maybe fix some of the looseness that was seen at the start of the game today?
Yeah, well, you know, starts critical whether they look to say, well, you know, maybe we'll go a bit longer. Maybe we won't. You know, now there's going to be a lot of questions asked about the goalkeeper and about playing it at the back, and you know, it's, you know, Kieran's got a tricky period, and for the first time people will probably be asking questions of him. I've no doubt he's the right man to get those right answers. Lift the boys. We just need something to go our way. We've not had many days like this. We've had so many positive performances. You know, the way McKenna's been in this team, I wouldn't be surprised if they got some results over this Christmas period.
Like Spurs away, that's what we did that time. And, you know, the second half, we kept it to a goal, or there was one disallowed. But, you know, we need to just go again, regroup and see where we go. And just enjoy the occasions, because they are free hits in some sense. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for updates from inside the club today. And listen, have a great Christmas, and speak to you again soon.
And a Happy New Year. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Take care.
Hello and welcome back to TWTV, and happy Christmas from all of us on the team. And we are outside the back of the North Stand, Portman Road, for another video verdict looking back on Ipswich's home game against Newcastle. I'm joined by TWT staff writer and keen Ipswich fan who's also just been in the North Stand, Kallum Brisset. Kallum, happy Christmas, welcome on board.
Well, it's not a very happy Christmas at this moment in time, is it? But
I'm afraid McKenna and especially the players haven't quite given us an early Christmas present at all, have they? So let's get into it, because Ipswich have lost 4-0 at home to Newcastle. I guess the narrative was, they'd had a cup game in the week, which we thought may have been fatigued them a little, but they're a team in form and a team with real quality, I think, as we saw today. So, Kallum, give us your overview of the game, please.
For a start, I didn't think they'd be fatigued at all. They were exactly as I expected, but I think it's all on us, really. I don't know exactly how long was on the clock when the first goal went in. 30 seconds, something like that. Took an age for it to get given, but it got given, and you're on the back foot from there, and we never looked like scoring in the game. I'm not sure what the game plan was, which is a problem, to be honest. Obviously we missed Liam Delap, clearly, up front. It was Schmodix who was up front today, and it just felt like, particularly in the first half, we were just trying to lump it up to the centre forward, and Schmodix is 5 foot whatever and he's up against 2 6 foot whatever centre half, so it's not going to work. And
2 dominant centre halves as well.
Someone's got to tell him that it's not working. It didn't make any sense.
Just talking about that kind of that setup, so we'll go through the team in a minute. It seemed to be that there were times when we could have put through balls through, but I thought Chaplin and Hutchinson and then the central midfielders, there was no connection there, and those through balls weren't working, and therefore they just didn't feel threatened.
No.
Maybe let's start with the team, actually. If we could just go through the lineup and changes there.
Well,
and
it was just the one change. It was Schmodix up front for Delap. The rest of the team was unchanged, and to be fair, it's probably what I would have gone with. It's just the way it panned out and the way kind of the team, there was no cohesion, as you say. It felt like there was no game plan. It felt like players were holding on to the ball for too long, and we've said that about players in the past, but today especially, and it just felt like there weren't any good performers in there on an individual basis. And as I say, the first goal going in so early, you're on the back foot from the off, and then Newcastle are the sort of team where if they get going, they can get going when they choose to. And once they took the lead, and then they got the second.
Some of the interplay between Gordon and Isaac
was way too easy.
Was too easy. Yeah,
the fourth goal, for example, is a perfect example of that. The third one's a complete mess.
Yeah,
but the fourth one's a perfect example. The second one as well. The second one we'll start with was Gordon was allowed way too much time in the box. To kind of dance his way through, and then it ends up being smashed in by, it was Jacob Murphy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then the fourth goal was similar. There was no tackles going in the penalty box, weaving the way through, and then it's left to Isak with a simple finish.
I think we had the first goal was obviously just weakness. I do think sometimes Davis on the left side is a weakness. James Scowcroft talked about that with us. They just came down their right far too easily, got the cross in, and then we all waited around, didn't we? Because there was everyone around me thought it was offside. The lineswoman thought it was offside, but it was VAR. We waited a long time for the VAR, and in the end it was a goal, and it was given. And we can't give away these early goals. We've got to cut these out, because these teams are so good. We've talked about eradicating mistakes, but the early goals are killing us, aren't they? It's just like Man U again. It's just not good enough.
And we know in the Premier League we've been fairly good this season. For the most part, we've been competitive in every game, and we haven't been kind of played off the park and battered per se. I knew that at some point this season there'd be a game where we would lose quite heavily. It doesn't make it acceptable, though. That's the problem. And today was just a complete negative. It just wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I think we know that we are significantly lower in terms of player quality to these teams visiting us. You could see across their team, it's a very strong Newcastle side.
Sandro Tonali in midfield was everywhere.
Tonali was just pulling the strings, orchestrating everything. Bruno for them is just a top. He's in like a top 5 player in the league. But my point is, Kallum, is that if we have to make that gap by everyone being on it, everyone winning the duels, everyone winning the press, and Chaplin had a really off day today. Hutchinson, that's possibly his worst game, and that meant that there wasn't because they were so poor. They weren't winning any duels. They were giving the ball away easily.
No, we couldn't hold on to the ball.
Yeah, and therefore then we brought the pressure back on ourselves.
The ball would be played into Chaplin. He'd take a touch, and the touch would go 5 yards in front of him. He just couldn't control the ball. Hutchinson, again, I've said it in the past, for all his greatness, I do think that he holds on to the ball for too long and he needs to release it sooner. And both of those were guilty of that today. But it's not there. I'm not picking those two out. From 1 to 11, it was just a really poor performance.
It was a collective, wasn't it? I think if we have a collective no-show, then we will get seriously punished. And it could have been 5. There was a fifth goal at the end.
It should have been 4 by half time. It should have been a lot more.
And in a way, there's some merit in the fact we kept it to a 1-0 loss in the second half. I'm trying to grab onto straws here. But let's just pick out. I actually thought the two centre-backs, Burgess and O'Shea, actually didn't have bad games. They weren't the problem. I think it was just the fact it was coming down the wings or through the centre. Kajus started well, but then I thought faded. What did you think?
Kajus started well, but faded off. Again, it felt like he was taking one too many touches at times, whereas early on I thought he turned away quite well and kind of drove through the pitch. But the two centre-halves, while there were no kind of individual moments, the fourth goal, someone's got to put a foot in. And the two centre-halves are both in there. Burgess gets caught for the first goal after 30 seconds. So he thinks it's offside. It's proven that it's not. But...
And I think let's talk about Muric, because that was another... It was funny how... What they say the sign of madness is when you repeat things that are negative to yourself. Clearly, the outball to Morsey, which is one of our ones. I know why they're doing it. They're trying to create space. But the outball to Muric, so Muric pushing out to Morsey and then back to, say, a Clark, but it was failing. We were getting pressed. And yet he did it again, and yet we gave away the goal. We just cannot make those mirrors.
We had no option, because what's the other option? Lump it long to Schmodix, which we were doing for the first 20 minutes, and he was never going to win the ball. And, I mean, that third goal was just a complete mess.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I'm bored of talking about the goalkeeper situation now, because it is what it is. He's the goalkeeper, and I'm just bored of talking about that.
Well, let's begin to close it out. I mean, full of Christmas cheer, as you can hear from behind the North Stand, but it was a disappointing performance. I like the fact that at the end quite a few fans stayed behind and sort of clapped them and supported them off, because it was an admission, it was an off day. Let's look ahead, because we've got 3 really tough games. We're going to be without Morsey. He finally picked up that yellow card, which was for a poor tackle. We've got Arsenal away just after Christmas, then Chelsea and Fulham. What do we do for Arsenal, Kallum, just to close out? What difference can we make over today's performance? Do we go deeper? Do we go closer on the press? What can we do to get rid of some of the negative things we saw today in the game?
Pray.
Yeah, pray. Okay, there'll be a lot of that over Christmas.
In terms of a game plan, we've just got to be more pragmatic.
Yeah.
It's got to be. We've got to go there, be organised, be resilient, and just try and frustrate them, because we're not going to have much of the ball. We're not going to have many chances. We're just going to have to sit deep, not give away stupid fouls, because against anyone you don't want to give anyone set pieces, but certainly not Arsenal.
Yeah, of course.
And we've just got to try. I mean, Everton went there last week and got a 0-0 draw. I don't know. I haven't watched the game or anything, but
follow some of the things they do.
I can only imagine that they went there to try and really frustrate Arsenal, and
that's clearly what we've got to do. When we do have chances to go through, we need to make the most of them. I thought Taylor, Phillips, and Broadhead
Broadhead when he came on was the best. Was the best player in the
because he looked to have some of that quality
in his 20 minutes on the pitch.
Absolutely. Okay, let's close out. Well, happy Christmas to you, Kallum. Have a great break. We'll see you.
Well, it's not much of a break before the.
But I'll see you again at the Emirates for our next game. And thanks for tuning in, and watch out for the next segment. Hello, and welcome back to TWTV for our final segment, looking back on the Newcastle home game. And I'm joined by TWTD writer Phil Ham. Happy Christmas, Phil.
Yeah, such as it is.
As it is. Yes, we've had some interesting conversations with Alan Lee and Kallum Brisset already. Interesting juxtaposition of views of the game. But let's get a view from the press box where you've been today.
Yeah.
And let's start really with your overview of the game, Phil, if that's all right.
Well, I think it was over in about 25 seconds, really, wasn't it? It was, well, rather over by the time VAR had overruled the assistant's decision to flag the first goal offside. Yeah, I think it was one of those goals that I think most of us thought was going to be ruled out, and it looked very much offside, but obviously it was very, very, very tight. But that obviously handed the impetus to Newcastle, who are in decent form. They're a decent side. Before the game, I spoke to an ex-player who thought that Newcastle were the great underachievers in the Premier League at the moment, given the team that the squad that they've got. And I think when you give them a sniff, as we did by conceding so early on, and sort of giving them that impetus, then it's very difficult to get back into it. And then, of course, we had a good spell, I think, at 1-0. Kept the ball quite well. And prodded and probed. Actually, there were one or two half chances rather than sort of out and out chances. Perhaps when Smodic was played in by Connor Chaplin, that's probably the nearest sort of chance we had. And Jens Kajustas shot over, but you never really thought we were going to get back into it. And then Kieran McKenna at his press conference talked about the 15 to 20 minutes before half time, when we really struggled to kind of keep a lid on their attackers. Murphy down the right, Gordon down the left, and Isak through the middle. I think their pace on the transition, when we lost the ball, they were so quick through there, and we had no answer for that. And to be honest, we could have been 2-0 down before we were 2-0 down, and of course they scored their second, and then the third was a bit of a mess, and so 3-0 at half time, game's over, isn't it? And then the second half was pretty much as second halves tend to go in that circumstance. They picked up one more goal. We never really looked like getting it back into it, and the half was played out.
So much to unpack there, isn't there? You're absolutely right. We all around me in J Block in the West Stand, we all thought it was offside for the goal.
Yeah.
And I think we were all sitting there going, we've got away with that. Again, a slight problem on Davis's side, wasn't it? Remember James Scowcroft talked about that. Soft goal to give away, but we thought we'd got away with it, and then as you said, we were punished for it, and you're just not going to come back from those early goals, aren't you? And also, Phil, I think you're right, it was good that we did sort of regroup, but we weren't really hurting them, were we, in that time?
No.
And I chatted to some Newcastle fans just after the game, and they frankly said they were disappointed by us. They expected a much tougher game. But to your point about Newcastle being perennial underachievers, they said Newcastle problems is inconsistency, and they've suddenly found a bit of consistency as we get to play them as well. So
and up to 7th in the table. I mean, I think that's, they in terms of squad, they're kind of right up there with some of the top teams, aren't they? But as you say, they've not really, since the takeover, they've not really kind of nailed it, have they, in terms of becoming one of the very top teams.
And I think that's that consistency point.
Yeah.
And I think Alan Lee was saying earlier on, they were a better side than when you see them in the flesh. They're a better side, and I think the combination of we've talked about this on the other segments, Tonali and Bruno, and then those attacking three you were talking about, were really impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, Gordon is a good player, isn't he? I actually thought Harry Clark did okay against him, didn't he? I mean, obviously got found out multiple times, but I thought we were going to get ripped apart and it was going to be a lot higher. Let's try and bring some positives around. I thought the centre backs were okay. What positives can we pull out of the game, do you think? Try hard, Phil.
That it hasn't happened that often, probably, is and Kieran said this, that we have to be, that we've been competitive, and to be competitive we've got to be 100% at it, and we weren't 100% at it today. And I think giving a team like them an early sniff as we did, and then there's other things we could look at. We were without Liam Delap, so I think he never stuck up front, did it? And I think he would perhaps given their centre halves a bit of a rougher ride than they got. But really, overall, you kind of look and just think we were well beaten, really. And it's the kind of performance that we've kind of talked about in previous weeks that we haven't had. When we talked about Sheffield United and Burnley last season, we haven't had that sort of until today. And I think the heaviest home defeat under Kieran McKenna. And I think it's just Kieran talked about lessons having to be learned from it, and I think he's obviously right that his concern was more about defensive transition and sort of defending than kind of how we were going forward, because he felt this the way that we kind of what's the word, the way we tried to kind of build from the back not necessarily just the third goal, but we weren't good enough at it. And
the sort of speed of transition wasn't really there. Some of the close control wasn't there today. And again, it's the things we've talked about. We didn't win a lot of duels. Some close control from, say, Hutchinson and Chaplin wasn't there as well. So we were giving cheap turnover.
This game, I think, perhaps for a long time. But we apart from that little spell, we didn't really look that we were at the races at all.
And it could have been 5, 6, 7. And in fact, obviously, VAR did help us out at the end to not make it 5, and there was a disallowed goal. Well, let's move on to, normally our favourite section.
Happier thing.
Happy. Well, I'm not sure how happy we can be. It'll soon be forgotten when we'll move on to the Emirates. But let's look at the 3 words from the forum that Homer puts up. And always these are kind of a good summary of the game. People have had the time to sort of have a think about it. And never got started from victory is a good one, I think. We just didn't get started. The early goal killed us, didn't it, Phil?
Yeah, I think that was the kind of main point of the game. I think it was very difficult from there.
Newcastle were class. I think we both agree on that. Alan agrees on that. If they can get some consistency and keep fitness, they could have a very good season. And that's from Isha Blue Stew. Outfought and outplayed. And I think we did lose the duels today, didn't we? We weren't really good enough in some of the one-to-ones.
They kind of dominated for. Yeah, they were comfortable, weren't they? Really? Yeah. I think it was a comprehensive defeat, unfortunately.
Don't blame Muric is 3 words, but there are multiple 3 words that are blaming Muric, and that's from Blue as Fook.
I think it's harsh on him. The third goal, he plays the ball. Kieran was asked about that goal and the kind of perennial passing it out from the back type, because obviously there's the Tottenham game in the week, wasn't there, where there were a couple of goals that were similar, or from similar sort of situations. And he said that he doesn't really look at that goal in the context of it being, or rather he looks at the goal in the context of that 15 to 20 minutes, it being kind of very much how things were at that point. And so for us to kind of pass the ball out and lose it in that circumstance was how he saw us playing in that period. So I don't think he sees that, and he said that we've been playing like that for 2 years, and we've played that particular out swept wide thing 100 times, and we're kind of one of the lowest sides in the division in terms of conceding goals like that. So
and I think there's a lot of people. Other 3 words involved calling back for Walton, etc., etc. But I think for me, he has actually there's been slow improvement from Muric in his short game. I think, but it was such a howler today. It's understandable why fans are kind of pointing out.
I'm not sure it's his fault though. I think it's more Kayusta being sort of a bit weak in the challenge, really. But I don't know. It's one of those things.
I don't think so. There's another comment where I don't think that is why we lost so badly.
Oh no,
and I think we need to focus on that.
We were 2-0 down at that point, and I don't think we're going to come back from 2-0 down against Newcastle.
And the last one is Merry Xmas or Merry Christmas Newcastle from Banks to Dettslave, and that's exactly what it was. A gift today. And as I said, speaking to Newcastle fans, they were expecting a much tougher game, and we kind of gifted them the game. Collectively, the summary of what we've all been saying is collectively we just didn't turn up. You have to be at the top levels when you're playing such good players.
And if you don't play particularly well and you give away a goal in the opening seconds, then it's going to be tough. And I think that those sorts of performances, having been promoted as we are you're going to expect them every now and then. But the key really is that they don't happen too often. And fortunately, in the first half of the season, they haven't happened too often. Today's really the first one, other than the sort of Liverpools and Manchester Cities, where we kind of, and West Ham perhaps to a lesser degree, although, we were in that game to half time, weren't we? I think that's the first sort of time it's really happened.
The no-shows in the 17 games we've played have been a lesser number than the times we've actually given teams good games, and there's been tight margins. I think it's what we've got to take from this going forward.
I think I'd be unhappier about games where we have competed and done well and not taken the points we deserve from them. More than today.
The Leicester at home, etc. All right, let's look to close out Survival League view. Lots happening in our survival rivals, and I think we are going to have to start thinking about this as survival rivals, because it's going to be: are there 3 worst teams, or should I say, are there 3 teams going to finish below us? It's a lot about that. Obviously, a lot of change in the manager situations at those. Rude's obviously come in at Leicester. We've got Vito Pereira. Has been brought in at Wolves, a Portuguese, been working in Saudi. Some very interesting press conferences. I'm not sure you've seen those online from him in Saudi. They're quite surreal. So that's a bit of an interesting one. And Ivan, I've got Muric here, but I'm not sure that's what it is. But Ivan
Juric,
that's it. It's not another Muric.
Ivan Juric, Croatian, who's been working AS Roma's second sacked manager of the season.
Exactly, and not a great win record in his time at Roma. He's come in obviously at Southampton, so be interested to see where those rivals go with those. In terms of games around us, Palace were on the time we went on air, we're losing.
4-1
it's 4-1 at
I
home.
was listening to it,
Palace 4-1 at home to Arsenal, which is positive for us, and then a big day tomorrow where Everton have Chelsea at home. Fulham have Southampton at home, and Leicester and Wolves is a massive game that I think we'll all be looking out for. Be interested to see where that one goes
I think
going
a draw,
forward.
possibly the result we'd like from that, I think. Really.
And then our league position, we're 18th, we've won 2. It's a shame we haven't got that first home win. Drawn 6, lost 9, so we're now in the negative again in terms of results.
Results against defeats,
another bit of a killer, although I think frankly feel it could have been a lot worse, is our goal difference is minus 16. There were times today when I thought it would be a bit higher than that come the 90 minutes.
Maybe a bit.
And we have 12 points. So look ahead. We've spoken briefly to Kallum about this. Tough set of games. Arsenal, Chelsea, Fulham. I asked Kallum, I think his view was we need to pray to get something from those. What do you think we do need to do in those games?
I think be better than today, not concede goals in the opening seconds. I think that's a key thing we need to take out of I think we've just got to go into those games with we know that we're not expected to get anything from them, and I think kind of that maybe that gives us a little bit of freedom, but I think it's going to be very tough to get anything from Arsenal, very tough to get anything from Chelsea. Fulham, I think we gave them a decent game down here, so I don't think we can rule out getting something there. And
maybe the Chelsea, it's a chance for that. Chelsea been on a very consistent run. Let's get them at home. I thought one heartening thing today was at the end, a lot of fans, actually not that many, but a number of fans stayed behind and sang and clapped them off, which I thought was really appreciated by McKenna and the players.
Yeah,
and I think we just got
to made comment on that.
Oh, that's great to hear, and I think we just need to take that forward. So that's it from us this week. Obviously, a disappointing Christmas result, but. Happy Christmas to you all.
Yes.
Thanks so much
Merry
for
Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas indeed.
As much as you can.
Have a great break from the football. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you after the Arsenal game at the Emirates. Happy Christmas, and thanks so much for watching.